Okay, so anyway, now we can talk some more.
Where did we stop?
Okay, well let's just say it's now Sunday the 22nd. Unfortunately, I have to leave later in very soon actually.
1900?
Still 1980, 1998. That's still,
98.
but okay, what were we before Shabbos when we left off, we were talking about your escape from Germany.
About what?
When you escaped from Germany.
Uh-huh.
But what you told me over Shabbos was that in fact you and Opa were in Switzerland, but that you went back to Germany for a day to collect some things.
That's right.
And so
We saw the situation was such that one had definitely to leave.
mhm.
The propaganda was for Hitler from his company was so bad, and Goebbels already put up his terrible anti-Semitic speeches to keep the hatred of the Germans more concentrated every day. And the treatment of the Jews was terrible, degrading.
Yeah. Did you personally, or the children, did they ever have any personal
No, thank God,
degradation?
no. We were lucky enough to escape the barrack, the growing hatred.
Now Esther and Leo were in school in Germany,
Yeah.
and were they with Goyim in school?
No, that was the Jewish. No. Uh, um, Leo went into a non-Jewish school, and Esther also, but she was only 12.
But with the
And Leo was even only 10. So the school, the Jewish school, only has just started, and the children were not big enough to make use of it.
I think they must have been even younger actually, because it was.
When we
if
left
it,
Germany,
yeah.
I went with the 4 children. Esther was the oldest, and I remember she must have been between 10 and 12.
Right, because if my dad was just a tiny baby, he was not even 1, then she was maybe 10 years
He was
old.
about just
10.
about 1.
Yeah.
He was born in May. Was he born in May?
Yes.
And
May the 3rd.
And we left in December.
Uh-huh.
So he was.
Now you left in December. Opa had gone before you
Yeah.
by how many months?
A month, 1
Oh,
month.
that's all. Did he go to Switzerland, or he went
No,
straight
no.
to? He had the business in England, so he went to England.
Yeah.
And then you told me that you went to Holland.
We had friends from Leipzig the parents of the woman lived in Holland, and he helped people to take care of until they could go on to other places. And
What was their name? Do you remember their name?
I don't remember.
Thank you. That's okay.
It's not so important.
Mhm.
But what was important was that Opa got to know a man. He was, I don't really whether he was Jewish or not, anyhow, he had good contact with the consul, the British consul in London.
Mhm.
And he helped many Jews to get visas to England with the condition that they didn't come to England just using this visa to get out of Germany.
I see. So why was it necessary for you to stop in Holland?
We waited for the visa to go to Switzerland.
I see. And how long were you in Holland for?
Only for 1 week.
I see. And you stayed in the house with these
With the
people?
friends.
Wow, wonderful.
That was great. I remember how I could look after your father still. He was really a tiny baby.
Hey, there's a crazy story that I don't know if it's true, that you almost forgot my father at home.
When we were in Switzerland, and we stayed in a hotel in Baden by Zurich. That was over Shabbat. And we moved on, of course, from there. And everything was packed and ready. Children were also ready also. But the baby I had put on a bed to take as the last parcel into my arm. But I don't know how it could happen, but it really happened that I went out without thinking that the baby was still lying on the bed.
But this is not in Germany.
That
this
was
is
in Switzerland.
In Switzerland.
It was such a crazy story that everybody made fun of it, of course.
Well, it's a famous story.
Yes.
Except now it's turned into the Nazis running after you in Germany, and he's in the house in Germany. But now we know the real story.
That was a real story.
Okay. So, all right. So from Holland, you got a visa to get into Switzerland.
Yeah.
And then which city did you go to in Switzerland?
Fortunately, as Poland, we were able in Germany to get some money, some German money, which we were, officially were using for our so-called holiday time in Switzerland.
Uh-huh.
And we got a visa from the Swiss consul for a certain time, I think it was 4 to 6 weeks, to go for this holiday with the family to some place which we could choose. But it gave us the permission to enter Switzerland.
Uh-huh. And this
It was otherwise very impossible, really, at this time.
So the Germans and the Swiss thought that you were going on holiday.
That's right.
And it didn't occur to them because you were going through Holland that it was a problem? It was just
No,
part of the holiday.
Part of the holiday.
This is in December of 1938?
Yeah.
Okay. So
we went first to Basel, and we met up in Basel with Tante Fanny and the children.
I see.
She had friends in Basel, and it was a certain solicitor by name Cohen.
Mm-hmm.
We had a friend in Leipzig, Rabbi Cohen, son of the old Rabbi Cohen, who was for many years rabbi in Basel.
I see.
And this man was a personal friend of Tante Fanny and family, and when he heard that the family had succeeded to leave Germany, he did everything what he could to give us his personal advice how to get on for the time of waiting until we were able to join opera in England.
I see.
And he gave us the good advice to go to Engelberg.
Well, in Basel, did you stay in a hotel or with friends?
Yeah, no, in a hotel for a few days.
I see. And okay, and then you went from Basel to Engelberg.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Why did we go to Engelberg? He knew the Obmann there. The Obmann is a man for certain cantons.
Uh-huh.
You know.
Like a hotel?
No, that has nothing to do.
Okay.
This man was responsible for a certain part in which he lived. And Engelberg belonged to this part, where he was, he could decide for how long the family was allowed to stay there.
I see. So he was like a political person. Was he Jewish?
No, he was not Jewish, but he behaved in a splendid way towards Jews.
Mm-hmm.
And this Jewish boarding house where we eventually were settling for the time being, was under his canton. And he knew the owner of this boarding house. He was a very good Jew. Unfortunately, I forgot his name, he's not alive anymore. But he was really looking after refugees from all countries.
So there were many, many people in this boarding house.
Yeah, meeting there. It was like a good family house. was not a first-class hotel, but everybody had the possibility to do what he wanted in the kitchen even.
Really?
When we arrived with a baby in my arms, he said, do what you want. You can use what you want. I know you are recommended for my friend Dr. Cohen in Basel, and I would like you to feel at home in my place.
Very good.
He was an excellent man. It was such a modest house, really. And I remember still the cook was a woman who did this job there for, I don't know how, she was an old woman, she must have been there for 30 or 40 years. Do the cooking, she was not a Jewish woman, but she was a trustworthy woman, and he looked into the matter himself a lot. Okay. There was another person who was a so-called manager. He was a Jewish girl, coming originally from America, really.
Yeah, really?
And wanted to go back to America, but for the time being, she took it over to help there and help to manage the house.
And so you lived very comfortably in this place?
Very comfortably. So comfortable that we felt so much at home. The children went then to school.
Really?
In Engelberg, in this so-called, how does Leo said it's the Klosterschule in German.
Convent school.
Convent school.
Aha, so not a Jewish school.
No, a convent school, no. But they were also very sympathetic to refugees. They fought for them, and they did the utmost to help. So Esther's school days started in this convent school, and Leo also went there. He was a small boy. He could have not been more than 8
or 9.
Yeah. And I remember vividly, there was a certain distance to walk every morning to the school.
Yeah.
Not far, but he was separated for the first time from me, and he was crying and wanted to come back again.
Oh.
It was terrible, and until we made clear to him he's a boy. It's not nice if the boy starts crying. And I'm here, and the family is here, and nobody will escape without him.
Oh, so he was worried that you would run away again without him.
He felt that he's too much separated.
So that's an interesting point. How did the children take all of this running around? Were they a little bit traumatized?
No, they were definitely only because I kept with them. And then that Tante Fanny and the children joined us was a great benefit for the children as well. Esther and Edith were very great friends, because they were similar in age. And Ari was also a small boy only.
I see. Yeah, Ari's only 2 years.
2 years older.
Than my dad. Yeah.
So I mean, it happened that your father got ill. He got so-called, how do you call it? You know, where you get all the skins full with blisters and...
The chicken pox?
Chicken pox, yes. And he got it in a very bad way. So I remember I had to carry him around at night time. And I called even the doctor who was very nice and very friendly. One couldn't do much, just so cool with Camille. So that this itching what hurts terrible. But everything was done as if I would live at home. You know, people were so good to each other.
Yeah.
And they all mostly were refugees waiting for their visa to get away from there. Like we waited to go to England to join the family, so the others were parted to France or to America. We had a friend who waited terribly. He suffered by, he was an unmarried man but had family in America and hoped to get away as soon as possible. We kept up friendship later even.
Who is that?
Klausner, the name was Klausner.
Now, is that the same Klausner that ended up marrying?
No relation,
no relation.
But an extremely nice young man. And we got really very friendly with him. We kept the friendship After we both were, we were in England, he was in America. And when he came to London, he visited us, and we were very great friends. You know, in times of difficulty and even, let's say, fear for life, when we were all not safe, really.
Yeah.
One closes more and gets more friendly. So we met quite a number of people, and everybody felt a second home in this place. And the owner, he was trying to help personally with his contacts which he had in Switzerland, went to various consuls.
So did it ever occur to you that maybe you would just spend all of the war in Switzerland?
No, I was full of hope that on account of the work Opa did in England and on the balance also, that something will happen eventually. We didn't know when the war will break out, so that we would have been separated for the duration.
Right.
That was the greatest luck we had in life, really. That we just 2 days before the war broke out, Opa got the permission for us and for Grandma Hepner and Uncle Bernard for his family to leave and to come to England.
2 days before the war broke
Yeah,
out.
yeah. And to get all the papers together. I remember Opa phoned me to give me this good news.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in a dreamland living. I thought I'm really on holidays in Engelberg. And I didn't grasp what he meant. You must make your way immediately. He was more or less complaining about my attitude. In which world are you living, he said. Don't you know what's happening in the world?
So what, you said to him, no, I think I'll stay here a little bit longer?
No, yeah. Couldn't we postpone that for a week or... I didn't follow politics. I wasn't so interested. I was interested in keeping up the family. And we had a kind of a holiday time all the time.
Yeah.
Engelberg is a beautiful place.
Yeah. Well, you had the two eldest children in school. Was Rita in school? Did she
Also,
start school there
yes,
also?
also, yes.
She started school.
She learned German in Switzerland.
I see.
Grammar, I remember.
Wait, she learned German or she learned English, you mean?
No, she learned proper German grammar.
Oh, grammar, I didn't think.
Yeah. And she learned also the very beginning of English.
I see. Wow. And when did you start to speak English? When did you start to learn
I had
English?
learned English in schools.
Oh, so you knew a little bit of
Yeah,
English before
yeah.
you came here.
But when I came to England, I felt rather embarrassed because I couldn't follow really conversations spoken by English
I understand
people.
that. I understand
And I remember I took some lessons really
Yeah?
to refresh my knowledge.
What, with a private tutor?
Yeah, with a private tutor.
That's good. How about Opa? Did his English
His
was only
English
good?
was much better because he was constantly in contact with English people.
I just want to check the camera. Okay. I have to check. I didn't hear it though. So wait, now, going back...
Then we arrived in England.
Wait, I want to go back for a moment, because you told me on Shabbos that you and Opa went you went back to Germany while you were staying in Switzerland. You went back for 1 day to go and collect some things.
Yeah.
When was that? Was that early when you first came to Switzerland?
That was Tante Fanny had taken over to look after the children.
Mm-hmm.
But I went away on my own for this 1 day, thinking I could save some valuables for my own place.
Mm-hmm.
It was such a silly movement, really, and the thought was so unworthy, really, not fitting to the time in which we lived.
Right. So you ran
And
back...
I was so glad that I succeeded to come back and be again together with the family in a comparatively safe place.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what kinds of things did you collect?
I think a suitcase or two in which I had put some valuables, some of my best garderobe, you know, suits and for the children, some of from their suits and dresses and so on.
So when you
And
left,
also one or two silver candlesticks, which I
so-
knew were standing on the sideboard, and I didn't want to leave them really.
I see. And these are the silver candlesticks
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
were given by your grandparent, by your father, who, your mother's parents,
Yeah.
candlesticks.
Yeah.
So,
That was so much on my mind. I mean, it could have been a very bad thing, and it could have been caught and not been able to join the family. It was so connected with so much risk, which I didn't realize.
right.
That in retrospect, it's impossible to believe that one can be so.
Well, Upa also didn't realize it because
No,
Upa also came with you.
He wanted to do some business at the same time.
So does that mean that during the time when you were in Switzerland, did Upa come back for visits to visit you in
Only
Switzerland?
once, really.
On that one occasion.
And once Uncle Bernard also.
I see.
It was the first time that they used a plane. You know,
Ah.
one was not used to travel by train, one used the train, not by plane. And I was kind of feeling jealous that he was able to visit his family and Opa was staying behind.
Oh, and
Yeah.
Opa didn't get to use the plane.
No,
Oh.
we were in connection with over the phone, of course.
Well, you told me So you told me that on this return day that you saw some German people in your house. There was somebody in your house when you came in, and that you told me that on Shabbos. When you came back to collect the silver candlesticks.
There was the porter's woman.
Ah, okay.
She watched what I was doing,
I see.
and with some kind of suspicion. So I was so glad that I made it all most casual
Mhm.
and said, how are you, and a little talk, so that she didn't feel. Fortunately, she didn't ask me that I would come back or when I would come.
Right.
But the whole time was full with danger, really.
Really. Yeah. But you got a lot of things from Germany. I mean, you have a lot of photographs and silver. So how did you manage to get all these things out?
We were fortunately part of the Hepner family, with whom we really had no personal contact. I barely knew them. My family, Hepner, was a big family.
Mm-hmm.
And on account of these various women who were married with one of the grandfathers, they were also a younger generation.
Now you're referring to Upa's grandfather?
Yeah,
Okay. Upa's grandfather remarried. He married more than once, correct?
3 times. Yes.
3 times. So there were many distant cousins.
That's right.
I see.
Whom we didn't really personally know.
I see.
But
And where were they living?
They were also in the same trade, working
I see. In Germany.
in Germany.
Uh-huh.
And Opa knew them, of course, not on very personal relationship, but business.
I see.
And he knew that they were also on the way to leave for England,
Mm-hmm.
and they left in a legal way under the authority and with the permission of the German government.
Oh.
And they took a lift with all their things. And Opa asked them whether they would mind to take some of our valuables and put it into their lift. And they were very prepared to do that.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
And
Are you still in contact with any of these
No.
distant cousins? Wow. Okay.
I don't know even if they're alive.
Mhm. Okay.
No contact whatsoever.
All right. Wow.
Only when I came, of course, I was full of things and
Mhm.
books, and even our sewing machines they took.
Probably very valuable.
Very
Very valuable
yeah.
to you.
It was here in use in later years, quite a long time.
Wow. All right, so you left Engelberg for England.
Yeah.
How did you get to England from Engelberg?
From Engelberg, that was not easy because the grandmother who was with us did need a French visa to be able to get the permission to enter and to leave. Just a visa, a certain visa, which was necessary.
Would she need a special visa and no one else?
We had it in our passport,
I see.
and we didn't look really in time whether she would be able to take this passport, would be good enough for the. And remember vividly, Aunt Fanny did take over to do that, and she went to the next place where I think it was Bern, where the consulate, French consulate. And it was not easy to do that in such a short time.
Why French? Did you have this French visa, all of you?
No, we had a different passport. I don't know what kind of passport she had, which was in need of this
French visa.
Yeah.
And Tante Fanny took care of it.
Yeah, and we were very, very anxious that this should be done in time that we could go together.
Did you just discover this on the day that Oppa said, "Come, you must leave right away"?
Yes,
that day you looked in the passport?
Not exactly that day, but we were not careful enough to look in good time.
I see.
In one day it would have been impossible. There were a few days left, but the journey had to be postponed a little, and it got more difficult in the last moment. We used really the last boat going from France to England. The last boat. If we would have missed that, we would have returned to Switzerland. And Switzerland did not use. Our good fortune was always that we had not a German passport.
Right.
The Polish passport was saving us in various occasions.
Yeah.
So but anyhow, it was like a blessing from HaKadosh Baruch Hu that everything went really, and we arrived here safely. And I remember also a special incident was that Opa didn't know when we arrived in which harbor, which place we would arrive with the boat.
Right.
So he didn't get the exact date. The date, yes, and that the boat would arrive also, but where would the boat arrive? So he went from one place to the other to find out where we were.
You were traveling with Tante Fanny also,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So Uncle Bernhard must have been doing the same thing.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Oh my goodness.
It was the most exciting time.
But he found you.
Yeah, in the end we arrived. It was an unforgettable moment, really, when we were united again. I see the picture, we must have a picture, really. Esther and the three children. Gershi in my arms, and the others, Rita and Leo, standing next to Esther. She was the older one and took more or less charge as little as she could, but she was, as the eldest one, she had a certain responsibility. Because I, with the baby in my arm, I was very much taken by him.
Right. Wow. So did Oppa already have a home for you set up here in England?
No, a home is a bit too much said. He lived in a boarding house in Goldesgreen under very bad conditions, really, but he was a very modest man. Whatever was offered, there was a friend. A friend is perhaps a bit exaggerated, but someone from the same community whom he knew well and was also working in the same trade. So they lived together in the same house. And we, the first night, we were all taken to this place and were able to sleep here.
So where did you go from there? Did you stay in this boarding house?
No, we left London immediately because the war broke out and we were advised not to stay in London. we were advised to go to Wales. We went to Cardiff.
Really?
And strangely enough, in Cardiff, the first German bombing took place.
Must have been very worrying for you.
Yeah, I mean, the people who give us advice didn't know as little or as much as anybody else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So how long did you spend in Cardiff?
We spent at least more than 4 weeks
Mm-hmm.
until we went to Harrogate.
So in Cardiff you stayed in a hotel somewhere?
No, first we went to the Jewish hotel
Oh.
where we took place, and from there we looked out for accommodation in a house.
And did you go with, was Tante Fanny and Uncle Bernhard with you also then in Cardiff?
No,
No.
we went to some other place. Don't remember anymore.
Okay. So where did, so from Wales you went to Harrogate?
To Harrogate. Yes.
Uh-huh. And what?
And in Harrogate we took also rooms in the house.
Okay. And how long were you there for?
And I remember we went on our own and looked out for a place for the grandmother. She lived in a different place.
I see, I see.
We were glad that she was taken care of somewhere else, because with my little family and the old woman, would have been impossible
Right.
to look after her.
Right.
We lived on a very modest base, and tried to spend as little money as possible, because money was rare. Was really only what was available had to be spent in a very modest way.
Was Oppa continuing to work during this time?
Yes.
So he was trying to, continuing with the trade?
Even during, when the bombing started, he stayed in London, where we had, I remember now in retrospect, we had taken the house really,
Okay.
hoping that we would be able to live in London. We took in hand in the house, not so far away from here. But it proved that one couldn't stay with a family in London. They started to send the bombers over, and it was the unsafest place to stay in London.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to Harrogate.
Yeah. And how long were you in Harrogate for?
Oh, almost the whole duration of the war.
Wow. And you lived in rooms in a house this whole entire time?
No, we took a house.
Oh, you took a house.
Yeah.
You rented you rented or you
Rented a
I
house.
see. Oh, okay. And
It was not so easy, because I had to look after the family
right.
and after a baby.
Right.
So I remember I engaged somebody just to take Gershi out for walks, so that he got around a little.
That's good. And the children, the older
and
children.
then he grew up and went to the first kindergarten in Harrogate.
Oh. So this was where he started school, and the other children went to school also in Harrogate. Did they have a very difficult time learning English?
No, for the children it was not at all difficult.
They didn't find it a difficult
No,
transition from Germany?
No, not at all.
Were there many other refugees that ended up living
enormous number of refugees
in Harrogate?
in Harrogate. There was a Jewish boarding house,
Uh-huh. Oh, I see.
and we got also support from them.
Mhm.
And I remember Tante Fanny had a special friend there, and she came also to live there.
Mhm.
And we had a comparatively good time. But the men of Bernard and Opa worked, continued their business in London,
Mhm.
established a little office there,
Mm.
and in town in London called the Brühl. Have you ever heard the name? The Brühl is the part where the trade of the, what do you call it? What is the name of the trade? Where only furs getreden.
Mhm.
Not the confecture, the raw skins
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. The skins
were
of it.
sold and bought.
Oh, interesting. So they worked hard and
They worked
they're-
hard. And during the time while we were safe or comparatively safe in Harrogate, they lived in London and during the nights in a shelter.
And when did you see them?
Or, for Shabbat on Friday, they came to visit the family.
How did they get there?
By train.
How long did it take to get there?
Not so terribly long, between 2 and 3 hours.
Still, so it's really.
It was, and then Opa bought us food, which one couldn't get. It was all rationed already.
Uh-huh.
So he was able to special contacts in the East End, I think,
I see.
Jewish people who helped with eggs and with butter
Outside the rations.
out of the rations.
Did you ever have any trouble from the English government because you were supposed to just be in England for a holiday?
No, they knew that we wouldn't be here on a holiday.
Mm-hmm.
We had the permission to stay here. That was what Opa was working on.
Uh-huh.
Because he was working here and had a certain right of staying. What he worked for was only to get the permission for the family.
I see.
And that he was able to do at the last moment.
So your entry visa into
Was
England,
quite legal.
it was a legal visa.
Yeah.
Although when you left Germany, it was just
Yeah.
going to be a visitor,
Yeah.
a holiday
That's
visa.
right.
I see.
That was why he was living apart from us, separated.
Right.
All the time he tried to work and to get his permission. And we were fortunate that he was able really, otherwise we would have been separated during the war,
Yeah, yeah.
which would have been a terrible misfortune.
Did you, when the war broke out, did you know where all the different members of the family were? You knew where Uncle Werner was because Uncle Werner was in
But we
Palestine.
had also no contact with Israel, really.
Mhm.
There was not like today when one takes the telephone and makes contact.
Right.
I didn't know even where he lived and his telephone number.
Uh-huh. Well,
And
when he had left for Palestine in what year? Do you remember?
1933.
33.
As soon as Hitler came, he left, and he had taken contact and got a position in Israel. Fortunately, in one of the hospitals, he got a position in his special field as bacteriologist.
Mm-hmm. Did it ever occur to you then to go to Palestine instead of to go to England?
No, because Opa's business didn't allow that.
Okay, I understand that.
His way of earning money was here. And
So when the war broke out, you assumed that Uncle Werner was in Palestine.
yeah, we didn't know because we had heard that he was a certain part of the time of the war in Turkey.
Uh-huh.
He had to leave because the place which he got when he entered was taken away by somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
So he was fortunate that Istanbul had offered him a place to teach at the university.
Mm-hmm.
He had a good friend in Istanbul who worked for him and made it possible.
So, all right. And what about Opa's different brothers and his sister? Did you know when the war broke out where they were?
No idea.
You didn't know.
We were completely separate.
Were you among the first to leave Germany, or among was everybody? When you left Germany, were there any?
We
of
knew
the
that Jakob, the older brother, had left to live in Paris.
Mm-hmm.
That we knew, but that he had to leave, and where he would have been spending the years of war, we only heard after the war.
Mm-hmm.
Because we had no contact with him either.
He masqueraded as a Catholic family, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
lived in the.
In the unoccupied part. And only because Tante Elfe spoke an excellent French.
Mm-hmm.
she spoke such a French that she was able to make out that she was born in France.
Really?
And could live as a goy with her children in a small place. And Uncle Bernard,
Jacob.
Uncle Jacob, who did not speak such good French, was always hidden away when people came. The Nazis looked for Jews. And if they would have found, they would, without any mercy, taken them away. So he was hidden away when you, the Germans are coming. There was a certain place in a wardrobe where he was hidden away until they left the place again.
And what about there was also the Merkins. Zara Merkin was already in the United States?
Yeah, they were the one who were safest.
Mm-hmm.
Because on account of having business in America, I think he had an American passport also.
And who else was there? Elias, Uncle Elias.
No, he didn't leave Germany. He died before.
He had died before the war broke out.
Yeah.
Okay, so is that all the brothers and sisters?
And the other. Tante Rosa, I forgot her name, the wife of Meyer.
Uh-huh.
She went to America.
They were the ones who used to take care of the grandmother, and they didn't have children.
She didn't have children.
Okay.
And she went with her husband to New York, where he had business, also in the same trade, dealing with furs and in connection with London and another town in Poland, Warsaw, I think.
Uh-huh. So they were also in the United States.
Yeah.
So you knew that the immediate family was safe, but you still had your stepmother with whom you weren't close, and
we had no contact and didn't know anything what had happened.
What about Heinz?
Heinz went, fortunately, to Israel also. He was saved.
Also around the same time as Uncle Werner?
Yeah. A little later, but in good time still to be saved.
And what about your little sister? Your little
no
half-sister?
idea what happened to her. She kept with the mother.
Uh-huh. And there we found a photograph that's signed from her, from Vera, that was her name, right?
Vera, yeah.
In 1939, she had written you, sent you a photograph of her.
From where?
From Berlin. But presumably that was the last contact that you would have heard.
That was the last contact.
She must have sent it to you in 1939.
Then the mother, her mother,
Mm-hmm.
had family in other parts of Germany, and they wanted to be together. They knew that we had left for England.
Mm-hmm.
So they were trying to get out of Germany together with their own family.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently, and unfortunately, they were kept by the Germans.
Well, this younger sister was too young to be married at this point?
Oh, much too young.
She was very little. And there was another Heinz had a sister.
Yeah. I don't know what happened to her,
Mm-hmm.
but she also didn't keep alive, unfortunately.
Well, so all right. So you were in England and you lived out the war in Harrogate mostly.
Yeah, mostly Harrogate.
So,
Cardiff for a certain time.
okay. And then once the war ended, how did you hear that the war ended? Do you remember hearing it?
Oh, I mean that was made known. The whole world was delighted with the end of the war. But then one gradually got to know that so many people lost their life.
Mm-hmm.
Who was kept back, they sent to concentration camp, lost their life,
Mm-hmm.
and all what belonged to them.
Mm-hmm.
It was a terribly upsetting time. Because people, of course, tried to get hold of their nearest family. I know that even Tante Fanny had left mother and sister and tried hard to get in contact with them. And the mother, fortunately, very fortunately, she got to Switzerland through an exchange which was made. That means Germans were exchanged with money which was given to them, and a certain number of Jews were allowed to leave. And the mother and the sister unfortunately didn't come out because she kept back also for money reasons. She wanted to save something. And her husband came out, and she went back to save things which she had left. She thought she can't live without it.
Oh, sounds like what you did, but you were lucky.
Yeah, you're right.
Ay.
Terrible.
That's awful.
But her husband, that means the brother-in-law of Tante Fanny, he went with he came out to England.
Oh.
Waiting that his wife would join him.
Oh.
She never did. But 2 children were with him, who are living here in London now.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's good. Some children survived.
Yeah.
When the war ended, did you immediately leave Harrogate?
We left, and we left Harrogate immediately.
Did you still have your home in London?
No. We looked for another home. And during the war, or after we had returned, we lived for a time in Highfield Gardens in a rented house, which was a lovely house and served us all very well. But when Opa tried to buy the house, it proved too expensive.
Ah. And so
we looked out for something cheaper, and this house here, in which I live today, was a house which by chance we got on a very cheap basis. And we were happy because it served the house well. It was in a good position. It was the first house I had seen with central heating. And that was the greatest attraction for me because I could never get warm in any of the English houses.
it was a new house then, also.
It was comparatively new house.
Wow. And were people very jealous of you that you were able to buy a house?
No, many people tried.
What year was this? Do you know?
And we returned to England after the war,
When you returned to London.
To London, I mean.
I mean, how long did you live in Highfield Gardens for?
A number of years also. Esther got married from there.
Okay. What year did Esther get married? Do you remember?
Don't ask me for years. But she was married for 38 years.
And she married Moshe.
Moshe Gottstein.
And how did you like him when she brought him home?
She met him at one of these Jewish seminars, which were arranged from the Zionist Akiba, not the religious, the general Zionist Federation had arranged seminars for young people to meet and to learn. And they used learned people from Israel to teach. And one of them was Moshe Gottstein, who came, and Esther always was very keen to go and be with these young people at occasions like seminars. And one of them she met Moshe Gottstein.
And it wasn't probably very much longer after that Auntie Rita met Uncle David, right?
2 years later.
2 years later. So that's. Did you like Uncle David when you first met him?
Very much. He was introduced to Rita by Tante Fanny, who knew the family. And got to know also him as a German, as a good man. He was helpful to people who needed help. He was always there. He was well known for his good heart and for his especially good character.
And then you started to have grandchildren, right?
Yeah.
Must have been very exciting to have grandchildren, right?
That was most exciting.
When did Esther and Uncle Moshe, did they live in England at the
He was studying to get his professor in Israel, and Esther, that was Esther, and they put up a house here, Rita and David.
Here comes Auntie Rita. Hello.
Hello.
We were just talking about how you got married.
Oh yes, are you that far already? Well, you're nearly finished
Yeah.
then, aren't you?
Yeah, sit down.
Right.
I want to hear, actually, you know what? We keep talking about Israel, but we didn't talk about what it was like for you to hear about the state. Put that down. To hear about the state of Israel. When you heard that Palestine had become Israel, do you remember that?
It was great enthusiasm. You know, until the last moment, we were not sure will we succeed to get the sufficient support of the various countries. And without Truman, I think was at the time the president of Israel, of America,
Mm-hmm.
without his okay, that was the last voice which was necessary to make it possible that Israel was declared independent state.
Were you in contact with Uncle Werner at that time?
Shortly after, yes.
And you had gone, when was the first time that you went to visit him in Israel or Palestine? Was it Israel yet, or was it still
you
Palestine?
know, when Tante Fanny took care of the children, looking in the Sandwort, you know, which we saw in one of the pictures.
Oh, yeah?
Whilst I went to Israel to visit my family.
So
it
this
means
is,
Uncle Werner's first time after the war.
so this is before it was Israel. It was still Palestine.
That was still Palestine.
And you went by yourself?
Yeah.
Wow, my goodness.
And left small children behind. So the goodness of Tante, you don't
I don't
remember.
remember Tante Fanny looking after us.
Pardon?
I don't remember Tante Fanny ever looking after me.
It's possible perhaps that was it before your
No.
birth?
The only time Tante Fanny was in Engelberg, I think, when you left her, but you never left Tante Fanny with us. Can't imagine
I
why
did.
she should want to look after her.
No,
Where?
because
Where
she-
should
Well,
she-
you went by yourself. I remember
no,
you
No,
telling
we probably had a maid or something.
No, there was no maid.
Well, there was no Tante Fanny. She had her own work.
But she took over. She wanted to help me to go to Israel.
Well, I think
She
I would
was-
have remembered that. How old would I have been then?
It's a shame that we didn't ask Ari.
Yeah.
Well, you can,
Edith will know.
or Esther might remember also.
And Esther might
How old
remember.
must I have been then? I would
A
remember.
few years old. Yeah, little.
You must have been very young. So.
So tell me, what was it like? What was it like in Palestine to visit?
Which year were you born?
32.
32.
When was that?
You said this was after the war.
Yeah, well, I would remember. I'm not.
No, you, if anything, you have been a very small baby.
No, after the war, you say. Which war?
No, before Palestine, after the war.
48.
Well, in any
48.
case, let me ask you something. What was it like to visit Uncle Werner there? What was this
It was,
Palestine like in those days?
Oh, it was in a very good condition. And he had a very good job already. He was in one of the main laboratories, the manager
In Jerusalem.
in Jerusalem. Yes. And they lived in a house which you later visited.
Yeah, in Kiryat Moshe,
Kiryat Moshe, yes.
that Arab house. Arab house.
Was it during the Monday time?
Yeah, all that was their first home to go, their proper so-called home.
And was still the mandate?
Yeah, after, that's where they lived until they bought their new flat.
Yeah.
So how long were you visiting them for? How long did you go?
Not for a long time.
But you must have gone by boat.
By boat from Trieste, was most exciting. Shame that I know I have pictures.
There's a photograph of you with a bunch of men.
Yeah.
You and a whole bunch of men.
It was on the boat.
On the boat. You made a lot of boyfriends on the boat?
Yeah, all the men were my sugar.
And Opa didn't mind that you were going by yourself?
He trusted me. I wouldn't get lost.
So that's fantastic. And, okay,
You
so...
see, that was different. David would never have done
On the
that.
question of that, he says he spends so little time with me that on Shabbat he doesn't want me to go wandering off on
No,
my own.
I had
That's it.
a conversation with him.
Yeah, well, I know that is his attitude. He never sees me during the week, so Shabbat he doesn't want me to go
It's his only
wandering. That's the only chance he has to walk with me on my own. He doesn't want to give that up for anybody. So that's it.
Wow. And then, meanwhile, so after Rita got married and you started to have grandchildren, eventually my dad got married also, right?
It was
It was a lot later. It was in
not later.
Yeah, he was the last one.
He was the last one to get married, I know. But I want to hear what you thought of my mother at first.
Oh,
Honestly.
your mother was a friend in the house here and came in very often
Yeah?
Hartfield Gardens, not him, I mean.
in Highfield Gardens. How long did we live in Highfield Gardens?
Till Gideon was born.
Here, come sit here. Let's move this.
Till-
You come sit here.
Well,
Auntie Rita, come sit here.
that's it.
And do this while with the video going. You come sit here in one of these two chairs. And I zoom it out. So,
Dates are not so easy for me to remember.
Gideon was born in 1958, so I would think
And you
that in
you got married in,
I got married in 55.
you were
And
3 years
Gideon,
married.
I know you
Yeah.
you moved here because you were babysitting for us and you saw the advert
Ah.
in the local paper of this house. That's why I know.
Where did you see
In the
it?
Hendon Times, you saw the advert, so that's where.
so the only people living in
you
this
were
house.
babysitting.
So you were already married, which means that
Right.
living in this house was really only my father and was Leo even living at
No,
home
Leo
anymore?
moved out. No, didn't he? Move out in Highfield Gardens, or did he move out here? No, he moved out here from
He
here.
moved. He lived in the
Yeah, he lived
near
upstairs
front.
in that room. Yeah, Leo did still live here.
Yeah.
So,
Leo must have been in his 20s.
yeah, definitely.
Just a minute. Well, I was 23 when I married, so he was 25.
He was 25.
He married. I think he moved when he was about 26, 27, something like that.
So when I'm trying to just skip ahead because there are big gaps of time, but so let's hear about. You told me about what you thought of Moshe, and you told me about what you thought of David. Now, what did you think about my mother, Linda Rower, from
Well,
English background, not German?
Yeah, but she was often here in the house before they got.
But she was given a tough time, Mummy. Be honest. Abigail wants the truth.
He was given a tough time.
Mhm.
Opa was not so terribly enthused. Why? I think because he couldn't make out kind of Jewish homes he came. That was one of the reasons.
Right. It's very different.
Different, and he made inquiries about the Jewish community in
Croydon.
Croydon. And in Croydon, your parents were not really so well known.
Right.
Not parents,
My
grandparents.
grandparents. Right. So, but eventually my dad got married anyway. He just said he
That
was stubborn.
Yeah, he was stubborn and said he was in very good relations with his father. But he said, this is something which concerns me. I made up my mind and I will get married to Linda. But don't forget, during their time of meeting and being friends, they often separated. They, I think, went together for more than 5 years
Yeah, I think it was more than
And
5
during these 5 years, they were off and on.
Uh-huh.
You don't know that.
I heard a little bit, but never quite like that strongly.
There were times that one believed never will come together again.
Let's see. Was Uppa a little bit relieved when they broke it
no,
off?
No, he didn't care then. He was then leaving it entirely to Gershon.
All right. And what can you tell me about the years afterwards, since you've been a grandmother? Actually, it wasn't long. It wasn't so much longer after I was born and Absalom was born that Uppa died. Right? I mean, I'm skipping ahead a lot of years, but you know, that must have been very, very difficult for you when Uppa died.
Very difficult. It was 1930, I think.
What?
No, you don't mean
No,
1930.
not 30. When the twins were 2 years old. In other words, about 1972, no, 73. When?
73.
73.
73, I think.
Okay, so that was made you, that time you were nearly 70.
I was
69.
nearly 70.
69. How
Was
old
he-
was Daddy when he died?
69.
How old was Daddy when he died?
73.
73.
He was,
Very young.
Was he very ill?
he was ill for 3 years. Got little strokes one after the other.
Strangely enough, when you think of Daddy at 73, younger than David, he appeared so much older to me. Why is that?
In your mind,
Yeah.
although he was an active man,
Yeah.
but the last 3 years of his illness made him appear an old man.
Yeah.
He couldn't
I'm
walk
just
in-
trying to think, ages, talking about age.
Mhm.
David is 76. He appears
Yeah.
much younger. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
funny how I never thought
because
that one.
Baruch Hashem, David is
Yeah, I know.
is a healthy man, and Dad was for,
Yeah, I know.
for
That
3
is
years.
what it is.
He was nursed here in the house for 3 years,
Uh-huh.
and I had constantly nurses.
Also in Highfield Gardens. Oh no, that was Granny. Miss Feld, she's a
That
fat,
was-
fat old woman.
That was the last year only, when she needed really to be nursed day and night. But otherwise, I was able to do that myself. I did much too much.
You did much too much. You told me she was a very demanding lady.
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about Granny again.
Yeah, back to Granny. Yeah.
No, Dad was here, nurse here, I remember, when one first spoke about his necessary to be looked after and needing nurses and needing care. I spoke to the doctor when he came to, not only Dr. Adler, there was somebody else who was it.
That was mainly Adler, I think.
Yeah, but I
can't
mean,
remember.
first I took also the advice of somebody
Oh, I
else.
see. You had neurologists or
Yes,
whatever.
And he,
Geriatrics.
I asked him, could anything better been done when he would be in the hospital?
Mm-hmm.
Could he be looked after better? And I remember, I never forget that when he said, if you are able to keep your husband here and look after him here in your own home, that would make him the best, the most happiness one cannot see in this condition.
Mm-hmm.
Satisfied, and it would definitely add to his feeling well,
Right.
because the first 2 years where he couldn't do anything on his own, but he was still able to go up and down. And then there came a side, also a moment which I will never forget, when he just came to the staircase,
Couldn't move his legs.
couldn't move.
Yeah, couldn't move his
And
legs.
from this time, the last year, he did not move out of his own home.
Oh, it
Couldn't
must
walk.
have been so horribly difficult for you.
It was terrible. It was indescribable.
Then you must have been very, very sad when he died. Long, beautiful marriage with him, right?
Yes, it was terrible.
Mm.
But you know what, unfortunately one was taught with the idea,
Prepared, you were prepared.
prepared
Mhm.
that the end would come.
Mhm.
There was no saving of life anymore. And these little strokes continued, and I'm sure, 100% sure, that today the medicine has made such progress that one would have been able to do much more.
Well, it's interesting because that's what Gabi is studying, right?
Yeah.
But that's something that he studies now with the MRI techniques
Yeah.
on strokes. So, you know.
Well, they killed that poor rat first
They
to
killed
find
him.
out.
We spoke with him about it.
That's
Oh,
right.
yeah.
So you must have taken some comfort, I hope, in your grandchildren, right?
Yeah, and my children,
Why don't we talk about your different grandchildren? Let's make a list of all the grandchildren, starting with Esther, the eldest.
Esther was eldest.
I had the oldest grandchild.
Oh, you had Donnie was born first.
Mm-hmm. Esther never forgave me for that.
Oh my goodness.
She rushed into it. I
Danny
think
was
Lonnie
born.
was born 3 or 4 months later. She couldn't get going quick enough.
Be careful what you say.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
all being on tape.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Oh dear.
She will hear
Shut
that
up,
one day.
I'll shut up now. Oh dear.
So
I mean, that was what you dreamt.
No, it was too instant. I know she was feeling. Anyway, no more.
Better not to talk in details. about
anyway, so all right. So but let's start with your grandchildren. So should we do it in the order they were
Okay.
born? In the order in
Yeah.
which they were
it. Who
born?
was the second?
Lonnie was the oldest grandchild, and then came Lonnie.
Lonnie.
Lonnie, who is Esther and Moshe had Lonnie.
Yeah. He was
And-
older children. And between Lonnie and Plussy, how many years? I don't know how much younger. 3 years.
Then I think Gideon came next in that case. In that case, Gideon came next.
Yeah, I think Gideon was the next one.
And then Flossie.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. And then after that would have been Benji,
Yeah.
and then me.
When were you born?
I was
Bessie?
born on
Oh,
March
yeah.
3rd, 1969.
Oh.
So then me,
Then the
and then the twins,
Yeah.
Gabi and Johnny,
1970.
1970, and then
I remember still when you came to me, to you,
Mm-hmm.
because nobody expected you to have more children, really.
No?
No.
Oh, no.
I can give you a wonderful new news, which I know will delight you.
Yeah.
You said to me,
Oh, I see, did I?
yeah,
I remember when I said that to David's mother, when we told David's mother we were having twins, she said, that is completely impossible. To make twins is much too hard, you know. She you know, in those, it's impossible to make twins. It's much too difficult. She don't believe it.
were you very excited to hear
well,
about
yeah,
twins?
certainly. And I immediately brought it together with my own family, because my mother had twins.
That's right,
That's where it comes from.
exactly. And then after the twins comes Absalom
Yeah.
in
That's right.
1971,
Yeah,
and then Zachary,
yeah.
and then
the
Boaz.
baby
Boaz,
Baby
who's not a
Boaz.
baby anymore.
How much is the difference in years between him and the
And Zachary,
Zachary?
5 years?
5 years.
So that was also an afterthought.
Oh, I don't know. I'm not going to speculate.
Mm.
That's for somebody else to give their own family history on that one. So that's it. So you have a lovely family, and you have now great-grandchildren,
Yeah.
right?
Really, I know it's something special, and it's only because people are living longer life today that you find quite a number of people who have the nuggets of having great-grandchildren.
So you have great-grandchildren from Lonnie, you have Alicia, whose bar mitzvah it is,
Yeah,
Next
and
month?
Neria,
and Neria, and then Plussy,
plus with Marian and Patal,
right? And Gideon,
and Gideon with 3 children, I know.
who were just here.
Yeah,
It's Jenny.
Jenny, Abidan, and Raphael, Rafi.
Right. We haven't forgotten anybody, have we? There are no
I hope
other.
not,
There
I
are no
hope
other.
not.
That's the complete list of your
Yeah.
great grandchildren right now, right?
Yeah,
As it stands.
So
quite a
far.
number, really, I know.
So far.
Well,
And that I have the knuckles to see one of them already getting bar mitzvah,
And then bat mitzvah.
and then bat mitzvah.
All in the
It's-
same year.
Yeah, it's quite
it
something.
is.
I had only must say that it's in a way great disappointment for me that I can't be there at this day.
Well, do you think there's anything else that we've forgotten to talk about that's of great importance that you want to remember? You lived through a tremendous amount in your lifetime. The invention of so many fantastic inventions from the time that you were born until now.
You're right.
What do you think has made the biggest impact on your life? Any idea? If you had to say the invention that changed lives the most.
I mean, years ago we didn't have the television.
Right.
We couldn't follow world events. It was all. This is the greatest difference between our time and the time of the past.
Mm-hmm.
That it has certain advantages and certain disadvantages. The world is too much involved in everything.
Yeah.
On account of the possibility to follow it up on the screen.
Do you have any words of advice for all your future generations and for the generations now?
I only hope that we will live in a time of peace, and that eventually we will see also peace in Israel, which is at the moment so terribly dangerous. I think we live at the moment the most dangerous time we have lived for a long time, if ever, because our existence is not safe.
All right. So,
Otherwise, I wish peace to the whole world, not only Israel, but Israel, of course, is most on my heart.
well, you have children. You have children there and grandchildren and a brother,
Yeah.
Uncle Werner.
So my nearest family.
Yeah.
And I do hope to see. I can't say I hope to see because it's not in my hands and in nobody's hands. But I wish Uncle Werner a long life. He should stay as he is for a number of years, as long as the Kodesh Baruch Hu gives him the life. But if he lives, he should always be in such a wonderful condition.
Turn off the tape now.